Welcome to our Module 2 video here. Today we will be talking about the visceral and head skeleton of the lamprey, the dog, fish, shark, and the mud puppy, along with talking about the appendicular skeleton. Just to drop a little point about the appendicular skeleton is that it is used or it's described to make up the paired appendages. So yeah, let's just jump right into this real quick. So with the skeleton, or the head skeleton, we have three parts, which are the splonchocranium, chondrocranium, and dermatocranium. And so the first two are more similar than the last one, and let's just jump into that right now quick. The splonchocranium is better known as the visceral cranium. It is always present, and it can be cartilaginous or bony, and it is the only part of the skull skeleton that is involved in jaw evolution, and it helps support the gill arches. Next we have the chondrocranium, which is also always present, so that's a little connection between the two, and is also cartilaginous and bony, or it can be either or. This one, it is fused together into one piece that helps organs and senses just work better. So, we can look at ourselves, and we have our nose and eyes. So that's really the chondrocranium. It's also known as the brain case as well. And then finally, we have the dermatocranium, which is kind of the outlier, or the one that's has a little variety to it, and it's not always present, but when it is always going to be bony. It's not always in all vertebrates, like I said. And the reason we still consider it here is because the earliest vertebrate did have all three parts of the skull. So the fact that it's gone means that there was a little evolution in which some vertebrates just didn't need it. So, yep, that's a little preview here, and we'll jump right in now.
Alrighty, to kick us off here, we're going to be starting off with our first specimen here, the lamprey. We're going to be covering a couple features, as well as the visceral skeleton, chondrocranium, and the lamprey is all cartilaginous, so it does not house a appendicular skeleton or any of the dermal elements that you might see in some of the later specimens that we are going to be talking about today in this lab video. So the lamprey is a vertebrate. Is also a craniate from phylum Chordata. And the species Ichthyomyzon unicuspis. Sorry for my pronunciation. My Latin is not the best. However, let me find the picture here. Hold on, give me one moment. So a couple unique features about the lamprey is that it houses 7 pairs of external gill slits. There is no good picture to show you guys, unfortunately, but it houses 7 pairs of external gill slits, and then internally you can see that there is an oral cavity, the respiratory tube, which obviously feeds water into its pouch gills to allow for ventilation and respiration. It does have internal gill slits, obviously, to allow the lamellae to exchange gases from the water. It has a branchial pouch with pouch gills and gill filaments. So moving on, we're going to be talking about the visceral skeleton here. So there are 3 main parts of the visceral skeleton, which is the branchial basket, the lingual cartilage, and the periocardial cartilage. So the branchial basket here, as you can see, takes up most of the upper body. It houses the gills as well as the heart, and then it also, you can see that posterior to the branchial basket, it is the pericardial cartilage, which protects the heart. And then talking about the third part of the visceral skeleton, the lingual cartilage, it helps support the tongue as well as the fetal. And all these parts, apologize, all these parts of the lamprey are not homologous to some of these other species because of its specific mode of feeding. So the lamprey is an agnathostome compared to what we'll be talking about later, which is the dogfish shark and the mud puppy, which are both gnathostomes. So an agnathostome does not have a jaw. So instead, the lamprey, if you can see here, it has a suction cup kind of mouth. So what it'll do is it'll kind of lash itself onto its prey, whether it be a fish or whatever, and it has these small razor teeth. You can kind of see in here, as well as a tongue. And then what that does is that pierces the integument of its prey, which allows it to retain those nutrients from the blood. And lastly, once again, the lamprey does not contain any of the dermal elements, such as the bony protective layer you may see in other specimens. I'm sorry, as well as you can tell here that it's a completely cartilaginous fish or marine vertebrate. So there is no appendicular skeleton necessarily. So thank you for listening, and on to the next specimen.
Alright, so for this portion of the video, we're going to be going over the head skeleton, visceral skeleton, and appendicular skeleton of a dogfish shark. So first off, to just kind of go over where each part is. So in this portion here, we will be looking at the chondrocranium, and then this portion here is the visceral skeleton, or the splantocranium. And just like the lamprey, there is no dermatocranium, and all, like the visceral skeleton and the chondrocranium, are both made up of cartilage, as is shark, and they're chondrithians, or however you say that word. And first off, we're going to go over the chondrocranium of the dogfish shark. So this portion here, which kind of looks like this, which is like the snout of the dogfish shark, is called the rostrum, and this pointy part, which kind of projects off of it, is the rostrum keel. And then as we look down here, we can kind of see the nasal capsules, and on the other side we can see like down below we can see like the orbits, and then you can't see too well in this part, but the occipital condyles, and then the bottom there's a hole that is the foramen magnum of the chondrocranium. And then on the other side here, the whole back part is considered the basal plate of the chondrocranium. And then next we will be looking at this portion here of the visceral skeleton. So this first arch is the mandibular arch, which is the upper jaw of the dogfish shark, and it is made up of palatoquadrate cartilage. And then the second arch is the Meckel's cartilage, or the lower jaw of the dogfish shark. And then as we look here, we can see 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 arches of the dogfish shark. And these little like stringy pieces are the gill rays, and you can kind of see there's like little portions that project off of the arches, which are the gill rakers. And since sharks are homodonts, they all have the same like type of teeth. They don't have like molars or specific teeth that do different things like humans, so that is why they're homodonts. And these strong jaws allow for them to clamp down on fish and tear them apart easily. So for the next portion, we'll be looking at the pectoral girdle, which is this region here. So first off, we got the scapular coracoid bar, which runs right here, which is made of suprascapular cartilage. And from the bottom, kind of behind it, the dorsal part of it, you see the fins of the pectoral girdle, and you can kind of see this like triangular piece here that is closest to the scapular coracoid bar is the basal pterygophores, and those are there. And then these The serotrachea are these kind of stringy pieces here that run along the back side of the fin. You can see that is on both sides since they do have two fins. And then the next portion we're looking at is joint at the bottom, which is the pelvic girdle. And this is of a female because she does not possess any claspers at the bottom, which are only in males, which allow them to attach onto the female. But they also have the same thing, just a little bit smaller than the pectoral girdle. They have two fins on each side. And like the basal pterygophores are this portion up here, and the serotrachea are this down here, and also the radial pterygophores. And yeah, that pretty much concludes the appendicular visceral skeleton and head skeleton of the dogfish shark. Alright, so let's go over the pelvic girdle of the dogfish shark. You can kind of see the iliac process, which runs along this part here, and then the acetabular surface, which is his kind of portion here, which is also kind of homologous or similar to the acetabellum in the mud puppy. And you also see the fins on both sides, and the radial pterygophores are like these right here, and the serotrachea, they're similar to the pectoral girdle. And then the claspers, which are not present in this because it's a female, they would be down here, which allow the male to clasp onto the female. And the cuvio-geodatic bar, however you say that, I know is wrong, but that also is this portion here on the pelvic girdle. And that pretty much wraps up the anatomy of the head skeleton, visceral skeleton, and appendicular skeleton of the dogfish shark.
Okay, moving on to the mud puppy skull. We're going to talk about the chondrocranium first. So we can see the little nasal region about right here. The most vertebrates, we're going to have, you know, the nose right above the mouth. A lot of stuff, obviously, breathing is very important through this area, and so it's a key factor in literally every vertebrate you're gonna have. On top here we have the orbit, and then we have that anteorbital cartilage right here. So it's not very distinct in here, but they are right here on top. Forgot to mention about the nasal region as well. There is some dermal bone in this area, which helps just the flow of things a little bit. Then we're gonna go back to the back here, and foramen magnum. Let me try to get a little closer. So right here, this is where this is where the vertebrates are really gonna start. So the backbone is this is how it connects to the skull. So obviously that is very important to this animal's like ability to function and live. And next to that we have occipital region. That's about right here. And so those two really go hand in hand like that. Yeah, so we're gonna look at the visceral skeleton now a little bit, and we're gonna start with some dermal bone of the vomer right here. It's right above. Yeah, so it's right above the jaw right here. That's just some dermal bone, helps create some structure. We obviously have the teeth, which are conical teeth. They're all similar, they're all the same, and so helps them really just create or eat their prey. Obviously that's what teeth are for, but they have very strong teeth, so they can, you know, cut through a lot of things that some other animals just can't. We're gonna look down at the lower jaw here, and we have the the denture part, which kind of tough seeing right here. Let me pencil. So about right here, that is the dentar part of the jaw. It's kind of more of the bar type, I would say. And then you move over here, we have the angular part of the jaw, and so that kind of helps it allow it to open and close the jaw. It's like that little hinge part, so very important to the flow and like just getting the mouth open, eating, stuff like that. We have the quadrant, so let's look at it from the other side here. So that is right here, and this once again helps create a little structure, and connecting to it right here is the squamosal, and yeah, so that's a little line, helps create more structure going back all the way. So yeah, that is going from here, the quadrant, up squamosal. So then we have, this part is a little tough to see, but it is the iota apparatus, so that's not the tough part, that's really the whole thing in general. Connecting off of that, we do have the visceral arches, so there you go. So you see like 3 little parts here. This is the visceral arches. We have the hyoid arch right here along with the branchial arches. Very tough to like really differentiate in this situation, but right here, very important for breathing, oxidation, stuff like that. And we're gonna move over to the pectoral girdle right now. So just like us, it's in the chest. What makes it unique here is that gives them a lot more flexibility than other tetrapods, which is very, very important. Along with the pelvic girdle as well. We can look at like a big difference between tetrapods and the other two that we looked at, the lamprey and dogfish shark, is that this boy right here, he can crawl over rocks and do everything like that because he has a lot more flexibility in his limbs. And you can also see like the little phalanges right here as well. And so it gives him a lot more capabilities to do things that other tetrapods cannot do. And it just helps him move around a little more. It doesn't always have to swim. So yeah, it's pretty nice. I think I did forget one thing about the foramen magnum. What makes it unique is also that it is cartilaginous and not bony, and so that is, most tetrapods are bony at this point, but this one is cartilaginous. Who's saying that wrong? But yeah, I think that's all we have today. Hope that you enjoyed it, and yeah, thank you.